senator from Plymouth and Barnstable, Mr. Fernandes.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in support of this amendment. This is an amendment that deals with ocean acidification, and I also want to say that I'm so supportive of the overall bill, this environmental bond bill. It's been a long time coming. Our oceans are rapidly acidifying, and ocean acidification is often referred to as climate change or global warming's evil twin, but it gets way less coverage than global warming does, but it still will have almost as much profound effects on our life on this planet, but in particular, the life of the oceans. And our oceans are acidifying for two main reasons. One is because when carbon emissions are emitted into the atmosphere, our oceans absorb about 30% of CO2 emissions. This is really important because it reduces the amount of carbon going into the atmosphere, but it has some really profound negative effects in our ocean because there's a chemical reaction that occurs when CO2 bonds with H2O to form carbonic acid that lowers the pH of our oceans. And so this acidification has negative impacts on a whole host of different industries and different marine life. But most importantly, it has really profound impacts on our shellfish because this chemical reaction takes out the carbonate ions that shellfish need to form their shells. And so this is an issue I'm sure not a lot of people have heard much about, but is one that I know a little bit about because 9 years ago, I filed the first legislation in the state around ocean acidification alongside my partner, Senator Sear, as the Senate sponsor of the legislation when we first got elected and came into the building in 2017. And that legislation set up the state's first commission on ocean acidification, where a number of members were a part of it. We had regular meetings, and this took place before and then during COVID, so we went remote. But all told, we had dozens of meetings. And this is a commission. I just want to shout out a few of the members. Of course, Senator Sear is my co-chair, but Senator Lovely, Senator O'Connor, Representative Matt Moratori, Representative Sarah Peake, a truly bipartisan commission of legislators coming together to take on one of the biggest challenges facing our oceans. And we were joined by the Nature Conservancy, by the New England Aquarium, the Lobstermen's Association, the Rivershed Association, Woods Hole Oceanographic, the Marine Biological Laboratories, and partners in EEA, including DMF and CZM and DEP, were a part of this commission. And so after over a year of work, we came out with a series of recommendations. And I encourage everyone, there's a very lengthy ocean acidification report that we put out that goes into detail the challenges that Massachusetts faces with this issue, and then instructs recommendations for how to address these challenges and address ocean acidification. And so there are two parts to this. There's one part where the ocean absorbs CO2, that makes our oceans more acidic. That is an emissions-based problem. That is a global problem and a global challenge. How can we address that locally? Well, we can do our part by reducing our own CO2 emissions, but of course that is only a small dent in global emissions. And we do our part here in Massachusetts to reduce our CO2 emissions. But the other part of acidification is actually localized through nutrient runoff, stormwater runoff, fertilizer runoff, and the like, that actually lowers the pH, drives up the acidity in localized areas. And that has really negative impacts on our shellfishing industry here in Massachusetts. We have a $700 million plus fishing industry in Massachusetts. One of the biggest bright spots one of the areas of the most growth is our shell fishing industry. And so it's so important that we protect that industry, that we preserve it for generations to come. And one of the coolest parts about this industry is you see a new generation of fishermen getting into it. And so what this legislation does is it acts on one of the recommendations of the committee in aggregating all of our ocean monitoring data under a dashboard for EEA, the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, to put out. This is not only really good for our scientific institutions who can monitor this data and have easy access to it and use it for certain studies. It's also good for our state and our municipalities for when we're thinking about investing some of the environmental bond funds into estuary restoration, into river restoration. We can look at places that have some of the biggest impacts in terms of water quality impacts. And then thirdly, I think most importantly, this is important for our shell fishing industry. This data will help our shell fishermen determine where to put up their aquaculture installations. They want to be in less acidic areas, and this data will help inform those decisions. And then we hopefully will get into a situation where this is real-time data, where shell fishermen may be able to move their installations on a weekly, monthly basis, given patterns of localized nutrient pollution and ocean acidification. We're already seeing from our shell fishing industry that they are having smaller shells. Our oysters are actually smaller here in Massachusetts than they were just a few years ago because of ocean acidification, because of the lack of carbonate ions. So for so many reasons, I think this is a really good piece of legislation to support and pass, and I'm deeply grateful to all of my colleagues for their support in this and the bipartisan engagement we've had on this issue in the commission, and no one's been more involved on this as well than Senator Sear. So thank you, Madam President, for allowing me the time to talk about this amendment, and of course, I encourage it to be supported in the final bill.